Get it.
Good luck.
I got this. Yep, I just put the. You just clipped on the back with your earpiece. I have the cable. So
Oh, okay.
feel free to- sanitize our hand real fast. There you go. Here's your ear.
Thank you.
It's plugged in, and you have total volume control.
Where?
So right here, there's your volumes. You got a talkback button, and it's also
Talk. I don't have a mic.
You got a lav mic.
Oh, okay, great. I should have figured that out. Right?
When I was reaching in your jacket. Do you have a jacket? Okay.
I got you, Brian. You got me? All right, buddy. Yes, sir. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Okay, so I'm gonna put on this end. So I'm assuming you'll look.
Ring Magazine senior writer. How do you like that, senior writer?
And then means I'm old, I guess, right? And then I'm gonna go up your shirt.
Welcome to Las Vegas, where minutes from now we will be witness to the grand arrivals, first of Terence Crawford and then of Canelo Alvarez. That's the scene inside, that's the media center inside the Fontainebleau Hotel. And the fighters will be showing up for a fight. This is a fight of the century, Crawford and Canelo. I'm Mark Kriegel. That's the great Keith Idec, senior writer for Ring Magazine. Tell me, why is this as special as we believe it is?
Well, Mark, it's the biggest fight in the United States in more than 10 years, since Mayweather-Pacquiao, for sure. There's a lot of history at stake here, obviously, for Terence Crawford, moving up 2 weight classes, really 3 weight classes, because he's more a welterweight than a junior middleweight. And there's, a lot at stake for Canelo Alvarez, too, because if he loses this fight, it's going to damage his legacy because he'll lost to what's perceived, anyway, as a smaller guy.
I have never seen a fight with 2 guys more explicitly concerned with their reputations, not for this year or next month or next year, but for all time. And what happens on Saturday night at Allegiant Stadium will change the way, or potentially change the way, certainly for Crawford, how he's viewed as an all-timer. And this is a risk that neither guy really has to take. If you look on Canelo's side, if you look on Crawford's side, he's older. He's the B side. He's moving up. None of that bodes well. But I think, I mean, people like me have great confidence. If you've seen Crawford over the years, what he doesn't have is self-doubt.
He is the most confident guy you're going to come across, and his confidence is one of the most. It's probably the best attribute he has going into this fight, because he has a lot of physical attributes as well. But you cannot tell him that he's not going in there and beating Canelo Alvarez. He wanted this fight, right? He could have.
Well, to that point, to my mind, there is exactly one reason why this is happening, because Canelo would not, Crawford would not take no for an answer. This is the fight that he wanted. I know that Turki al-Sheikh proposed the idea, why don't you fight Virgil Ortiz? Why don't you fight Boots Ennis? Perfectly good, if not, maybe one day we'll be calling them great fighters at 154 pounds, where Crawford had just won his first belt. And he said, no, I want Canelo. And Crawford set the agenda here. It's Canelo or bust. And I think that, I've been covering Crawford for a long time, and I have never seen you see Turki al-Sheikh there, who has basically bankrolled this thing, who stood by Crawford, and he told Crawford, listen, I will do my best to make this fight happen. And indeed, it is happening. What did Canelo have to say yes to? Why is he taking this?
Ultimately, I think it was too much money for him to turn down, Mark, at a certain point. He got the Williams Skull fight for a hefty 8-figure payday. He's making 9 figures for this fight. It was too much to walk away from, too much to turn down. He didn't really want this fight in the sense that it's a high-risk, low-reward proposition for him, in the sense that if he wins, he's supposed to win. He's a super middleweight. He's supposed to win.
Which is why Crawford wants this, because it sets the idea of him apart. Guys are not supposed to go up maybe a division, but 2 divisions. And it's closer to 3 divisions, because he spent the bulk of these last years at 147 at welterweight pounds. We're about to hear from the inimitable MC Max Kellerman.
You get there for the undercard. That's when the party starts, right? The undercard. Usually when you go to a fight on a Saturday night, the party starts with the undercard. But this is not a usual fight or event. The party starts tomorrow, 2 p.m., here at the Fontainebleau, the Blue Live Theater. That's when the undercard starts. You know how much tickets are? $3.99. That's my favorite price. It's free to the public. You are all invited to the undercard tomorrow at the Blue Live Theater, right here at the Fontainebleau. That's where it starts, but it continues the next night, because Thursday night is the debut of The Underdog, and you can get your tickets now. What that means, I gather, is that we have a grand arrival. And I'm guessing that's not Canelo Alvarez. Terence Crawford has arrived, ladies and gentlemen. You nervous a little bit, Canelo fans? Yes or no? Crawford's a smaller guy, you know. Your guy can't lose to a smaller guy, right? He's risking a lot with this fight, right? It's a high-risk fight for Canelo. Have you watched Crawford? You guys watch Crawford? You're saying Crawford runs? You have not watched Crawford. You're afraid he's going to run? It's not his style, guys. Not his style. Terence Crawford, where is he? He's making his way up here. Canelo fans, I know you're nervous about this. You know how I know? If I'm neutral. But if I was a Canelo fan, I would be nervous because he's supposed to win this fight. Right or wrong? Is he supposed to win? But Crawford's never lost. Never lost a fight, never come close. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Terence Crawford.
Keith,
how you feeling, champ?
Let's listen to Mac.
A lot of boos when you came in. This is going to be a pro-Canelo crowd. How you feeling about that?
Oh, this ain't nothing different than when I went to Scotland and fought Ricky Burns. So I'm cool with it.
It's nothing different. At Allegiant Stadium, the biggest fight since Pacquiao and Mayweather?
Hey, listen, they all going to be quiet come Saturday.
They're all going to be quiet come Saturday? Thank you, bud. Appreciate it, champ. Where's Bomac? That's what I want to know. Where's Bomac? There he is, the man of the hour, Turkey a la Sheikh. Turkey, you're making the undercard free for everyone tomorrow night. Everyone's invited. 2 p.m. Right here at the Blue Live Theater at the Fountain Blue. That's where the party starts, everybody. No, Bomac, you're taking a long time to get up here, brother. I'm going to keep talking to your guy. Come on in here, Bomac. Now, a lot of people in the crowd just now were saying Crawford's going to run. Are you preparing your guy to run?
Do it look like he's prepared to run?
I've never seen him run, but they think he will.
Have we let you down yet?
How's your guy going to beat Canelo Alvarez, the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world?
Ring IQ.
Ring IQ? Doesn't Canelo have a high IQ?
I don't give a damn about all that, man. I don't care about
Bud, what does it feel like when you get up here? You said it's like when you went over to Scotland, but you're the villain in this to these people, right? Right here, this crowd, the people who showed up here, I heard them boo you. What does that feel like?
It's cool. I've been booed before. Hey, listen, they can't fight for him, so it don't matter.
And when they say you're going to run, what do you have to tell them?
I already said it before. Before we got here, I said, I'm going to run upside his head. And that's what I said.
So he's going to run, but upside Canelo's head, according to everybody. That's right. I see. Bud, you have anything else to tell these people?
Listen, I love each and every one of y'all, but come Saturday, y'all gonna be crying like I said. I hope y'all put a lot of money on the fight, too.
All right, Bud, thank you very much for your time. Bomac's got something to say. What time is it? What time is it? Thanks, Bomac.
Let's go, baby.
Now we have another little treat before you before we get to Canelo Alvarez. Trejo Mariachi, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, Keith, anything surprise you? IQ, you're going to be crying Saturday. Crawford tells Canelo's fans, anything out of the ordinary?
No, I think, Crawford's really playing up the villain angle. I think he's enjoying this. He enjoys being doubted. One thing Mark, you and I have covered Terence Crawford for a long time. You know him very well. He really takes things to heart. He's motivated when he senses any doubt whatsoever.
I actually think it runs deeper than that. I think it goes back to his mother. I think it's at the very core of who he is. He needs to be doubted. There's a famous story about him going for his first title against Ricky Burns, and his mom, whom he credits as his motivational guru. He's going to Scotland to fight the Scottish champ for his first belt. No one really knows who he is. And she goes, yeah, you're going to get beat up. And it's that doubting that energizes him. And I have never seen in any division, any fighter, any athlete I've come across, including Michael Jordan, having to, motivate himself by getting cut as a sophomore or some nonsense like that. I've never seen a fighter for whom doubt is a more important fuel. It's so essential to his makeup. You doubted me. You doubted me. That's what makes Terence Crawford. And I think that when he looks at Canelo, he sees the antidote to all that doubt. He sees the ultimate, I told you so. And one of the things that's peculiar to this stage of Canelo's latter career is that I think that because he was such a potent economic engine, guys look to him as a score, as a payday. I don't think that Crawford looks to him that way. I think that, and Crawford told me this morning, that those guys, recent guys who have fought Canelo, thought going 12 rounds was a victory. I'm here to win, and I don't doubt for at all, a little bit. He will not run. That's not fair. Skull ran. He will stay in front of him. And I think that could be to his peril, Crawford.
Yeah, and Dimitri Bivol brought up a good point in recent months when he, the last guy to beat Canelo said his mental toughness and his mental strength is one of his greatest advantages going into this fight. Because other guys come into the fight defeated. They're entering the ring thinking that they can't win. That is the complete opposite of the way Terence Crawford feels about this. And it's why, like you said, Mark, he demanded this fight. He could have continued fighting. Yeah, to make the most money, he would have had to have fought Boots or Virgil Ortiz. No, and I get why
to make the most money?
No. To make the most money, he took this fight,
right?
Obviously, but I'm saying to make the most.
I don't think he did this for money.
No, I agree. Yeah. But there is a dramatic difference in the money. But he would have been paid very well to fight Boots or Virgil Ortiz. But I get it from his perspective as a guy who's going on 38 years old, not wanting to fight those young lions like that because it's more risk than it's worth for him at this point. If he's going to risk his it's going to be against Canelo.
You see this scene with him doing media row and the big scrum, one media outlet after another. And this is precisely the kind of scene and the kind of fight that he has been denied, through no fault of his own for the last, I don't know how many years. I mean, I covered him throughout the Top Rank broadcast, and it was always a production trying to get him a fight, or certainly a fight that was commensurate with his talent. Now, I mean, there was a lot of talk. He didn't draw, and this and that. I think it was a lot of it was a cop-out. Fighters draw when they fight other great fighters. And no one said that after he took out Errol Spence. And Errol Spence was precisely the type of opponent, epic opponent, that had been withheld from Crawford for years. I mean, because basically the way people call it politics, it's actually economics. The way the economics of boxing broke down is that the PBC had all the welterweight champs of any repute, except for Terence Crawford, who was with Top Rank. They couldn't. I think both organizations have culpability. They weren't willing to share. They couldn't make the fight, however you want to say it. But as a result, his reputation suffered, and I think that's why he wants Canelo. He wants to be in this big fight because it's this type of scene where he is at the center of the boxing universe that he's wanted for many, many years.
Mark, it's interesting also in that when he finally did get the Spence fight, and he dominates an undefeated, unified welterweight champion to become the undisputed champion in a second division, he still didn't get the credit that he felt he deserved.
Because Spence was old. And Spence
he was damaged goods because of the car accident and a detached retina. And he didn't live.
I know what I saw in that fight.
He didn't live the cleanest life outside of the ring, which Errol will tell you himself. So he doesn't even get the credit for his signature win. So I
didn't hear all those doubters on the way in.
Understood.
They were not nearly as vocal as they were after the fight, and that was an extraordinary domination.
And I'm not saying that that's a fair criticism necessarily, but that's what he's had to live with for the last 2 years, which is again why he wanted a fight like this, because again he goes in as the doubted underdog, the smaller guy. He can't do it. To your point earlier about what his mom told him before he fought Ricky Burns. He's driven by it's his entire existence. He's like that outside of the ring, as you know. But ping pong, basketball, it doesn't matter what it is. He's an extremely competitive person.
There's another element to this too, which is, look, Canelo is the great Mexican fighter, and certainly this century, Mexico has risen in prominence and economic stature within boxing. It's a crucial market. It's crucial for the production of fighters. We've talked ad nauseum about what a Mexican fighter is, Mexican style, all of that stuff. But everyone knows about Mexico and boxing. Terence Crawford is from Omaha, Nebraska, and no one thinks of Omaha as a boxing town. And that idea, that where are you from idea, has followed Terence Crawford since he was a kid in the amateurs. Like, yo, you're from where? They have fighters in Nebraska? Football players, maybe, but fighters? And Terence Crawford is through and through the fight. So I think that there's another element that he's been looked at as having no pedigree, not from a boxing place, not from a boxing town, was an unknown quantity. And we were talking about it this morning, when he would fight well-known amateurs like Danny Garcia, like Mikey Garcia. He beat Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia was about as well-schooled a fighter as I remember coming out of the amateurs. And he beat him, but he never got any of the shine for that. And of course, in past years, one of the great ways for a fighter to come into the pros and already be known was the Olympics, and he didn't make the Olympic team either. So he was really sort of playing catch up from the jump, I think.
Yeah, and Cameron Duncan, his late former manager, who had a great eye for talent, obviously identified Bud as a guy who could become what he became.
You know how that happened?
How's that?
The great Timothy Bradley, I should say.
Oh, when he sparred. Yeah.
Bradley had a camp when Bradley was really like a top 5 fighter. And Bradley calls him into camp, and the condition was he had to fight southpaw. He says, sure. So, Tim's a champ. Tim's at the very top of his game. And after the sparring session, Tim's just sitting on a ring apron, and he goes, what the hell was that? You beat my ass. And that didn't happen very often to Tim Bradley, certainly not at that time. And he says to him, you ain't no sparring partner. He goes, you a champ. And at that time, it was a different Bud Crawford. And Crawford says, yeah, you think so? He goes, I know so. And in fact, it was, might have been Bradley's greatest prognostication of many.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he believed it, though. Crawford believed it from the beginning. He just didn't get the opportunity until he got those fights on HBO that changed the course of his career.
Yep. We're going to listen into some of the interview now.
It's going to be a lot of pressure for him as well, and that's why, us fighters, with the experience, we know how to deal with the pressure.
I just talked with the Saudi Dieguez, and what is going to be the difference for you? Saud told me that you are like a unicorn in boxing.
There's no difference. We're going to go out there and we're going to do what we have to do to secure a victory.
For that last. Let's see.
Terence Crawford.
If Canelo puts his hands on you in the face-off this week, how are you going to respond?
I don't think he's going to do that. So I don't know. I'll respond. I don't know.
Why do you not think he would do it? He did it once.
Listen, I think, it'd be cool.
Hey, Terence, that face-off that you had, I mean, were you able to size him up? I mean, what was that face-off like, and what's it like bulking up a little bit?
Well, I'm at my natural weight. Me bulking up, a lot of people is taking him too far in that. Oh, he's slow, he's bulked up, and this and that, and all that. He's fat, and this and that. You know what I mean? I don't care about all that. I just want to fight.
People said that you guys look very similar in size, like you were mentioning. If anything, maybe a little bigger in that face-off yesterday.
I really don't care if he's bigger or if I'm bigger. We still got to fight. Come fight now. That's the only thing I'm worried about or thinking about. I'm just waiting, counting the days now.
What do you say to people who are questioning your chin at this weight?
Hey, listen, I ain't never been down yet, so hey, they can question it all they want. Have I been hurt? Yes, I have. Have he been hurt? Yes, he has. Here's what it is. Let's figure it out.
All right, let's go.
Thank you.
Keith, I think we'll agree on this. Biggest single factor in the fight, the weight drop. He's had a good chunk of his career at 47, one title at 54, one fight at 54. Now he's at 68, which is Canelo's home turf. Can he do it?
Well, his people certainly think he can do it because they'll tell you to a man, Brian McIntyre and the rest of his training team, Steven Nelson, who's been sparring with Bud since he was a 35-pounder, and he was a light heavyweight.
Steven Nelson ain't Canelo, no offense.
Understood, but he was 175 pounds when Terence Crawford was 135, 40-pound difference, and they sparred together. So he's always been in there with bigger guys. He always took it as a challenge when guys came to the gym. Sparred cruiserweights, heavyweights. He always did that.
I've seen it.
Right, so he's not looking at it as the size disadvantage that most of the world is looking at it as because he's been in there and proven it to himself. He wouldn't be in this fight if he didn't believe that he could handle Canelo's power. And Mark, you know, there's a dramatic difference between sparring with heavily padded gloves and headgear as opposed to the bright lights of fight night when you're in there with smaller gloves and there's all this pressure on you. It's very different. So we won't really know until Saturday night how well Terence Crawford takes a super middleweight punch from a guy who probably will be a cruiserweight by the time they get in the ring.
What would you compare this to? Is this without precedent, or what? I mean, what do you go back and forget like Henry Armstrong, forget the last century, but what in the last like 30, 40 years could you compare this to? Is Leonard Hagler comparable? Is it not? Tell me.
Yes and no. I mean, he's undefeated, right? There's not a blemish on his record.
Right.
So it's different in that sense, in that he didn't have to do this, and he's risking his O. And one thing I would say, though, there's not as nearly as much risk involved in this for Crawford as there is for Canelo, because if Crawford loses, he's supposed to lose. Despite that the odds have tightened to the point where it's almost even, he's supposed to lose.
But he's also, this is a peculiarity, especially in today's day and age. No rehydration clause, no catch weight, none of that stuff. So he's fighting him straight up as a 168-pounder, even though he's never competed near that. The other thing, to me, in my lifetime, the gold standard of weight jumping would be Michael Spinks, who came up from 175 from light heavyweight to beat the great Larry Holmes, and he was still Larry Holmes. But this is different to me in that, Crawford's almost 38 years old. And a big jump of that proportion in terms of your body weight or where you had been at is, I can't really find anything quite like it. And again, as you said, he is undefeated. So is Spinks. But I find this outside of Spinks, this is certainly the most extraordinary jump and the most ambitious jump. And with this century, where we've become accustomed to a lot of nonsense, the rehydration clauses, the catch weights, he's embracing the risk, but I also think he's also placed, it's kind of ingenious in how much pressure he's been able to place on Canelo. Each fight comes with its own sort of politics, and the backdrop to this fight, if we're going to be honest, is that for years, for whatever reason, Canelo has resisted a fight against David Benavidez, who is a very big 168-pounder. He's long, he moves well, and Canelo certainly did not want to fight him for whatever reason. So it's kind of like, hey, if you didn't want to fight the big guy, come here and fight the little guy. It's almost like the politics of this. Crawford has made Canelo an offer through Turki al-Sheikh, has made him an offer he couldn't really refuse.
Right. And I understand the perspective of people who will say, let's not throw a parade for Canelo for making an absurd amount of money to basically fight a welterweight. I get it.
I don't think he's a welterweight. He's
well,
no, and once you accept that challenge, on Crawford's end, he's a 168-pounder. He can't have any excuses.
But the public's perception is that this is a much smaller man who fought one time at 154 pounds and has spent the last 6 years, whatever, 7 years, however long it's been, 2018 I think it was, at welterweight. So he's primarily been a welterweight for the bulk of his prime. So I do understand not wanting to give Canelo too much credit based on the financial aspect of it. However, there's a lot of risk involved here. It's going to, if he loses to Terence Crawford on Saturday night, it's going to be perceived that he lost to a much smaller man, and his legacy is going to be damaged unequivocally.
I think that there's a lot to that. It's why I think that the pressure is squarely on Canelo. I think that, again, that His Excellency Turki al-Sheikh has presented on behalf, without meaning to, has presented on behalf of Terence Crawford an offer that Canelo really couldn't turn down. What's interesting to me stylistically is that, you heard in the opening segment with Max the idea that, the fans, this is going to be a pro-Canelo crowd. Oh, you're going to run, you're going to run. This is not William Skull. William Skull, in the previous fight in Riyadh, did in fact run against Canelo. Whatever you want to say about that, Terence Crawford doesn't run. Terence Crawford boxes. Conversely, however, you have to assume that Canelo is the naturally bigger, stronger guy, because this is a weight that he's been at for a while. But Crawford's going to be there to be hit. And Crawford will engage. He has that type of temperament. He has that kind of dog in him. If he gets hit, he's going to want to get his back. Now, can he do that with discretion and discipline? That I think so, but that remains to be seen. Terence Crawford is a very violent, and I mean this as a compliment, mean-spirited fighter. And can he lay off once he gets cracked? I don't know. But he will be there he will not be far away. He will not be running around him.
And that's what has made him what he is, Mark. If you remember in the Yuriorkis-Gamboa fight, when he got hurt, that's when he flipped the script on Gamboa and tore him apart. Stopped him. When he got knocked down by Kavalauskas, let's be honest, it was a knockdown. Terence Crawford himself, in a quiet moment, would probably tell you that was a knockdown. He'd also tell you...
Terence Crawford would tell you, no, it wasn't a knockdown.
No, but I was there. But I'll say this. I agree with you. When we interviewed Crawford, I believe it was before the Sean Porter fight, I believe. And he said, people keep harping on this Kavalauskas knockdown. He goes, all right, let's just say it was these are his words, let's just say it was a fucking knockdown. Let's just say it was. What happened after that? To your point, it made him fight harder.
And it was early in the fight.
Right.
And he just took him apart after that.
He destroyed him.
Crawford,
after that.
yeah.
He destroyed him.
And
So
Kavaliauskas was a very heavy-handed guy, well-trained. I think the kind of opponent that's underrated, that wasn't a household name, but he really had great talent, very heavy-handed. And I think Crawford beating him the way that he did was another sort of unheralded accomplishment, because Kavaliauskas was not yet a name brand. By the way, you're looking at the grand arrivals, and Terence Crawford has already arrived rather grandly, and you see him fulfilling his media obligations. In about 30 minutes from now, we will see the great Canelo Alvarez, and he will make his grand arrival. We hope it will be Crawford as grand as Crawford. Was this grand enough for you?
Well, there'll be more fanfare for Canelo. There'll be a mariachi band and a lot more supporters who are cheering for him. But Crawford's feeding off of this. You can tell that, Mark. You can see look how relaxed he is. Look at him. I mean,
All right, question. Crawford is a slow starter because he has such a high boxing IQ. You can see him. He's downloading your information. There's a period of time elapses before he's downloaded everything, processed it, and then he goes to work, which is, frankly, what happened in the Kavaliauskas fight. Can he afford to do that here?
Absolutely not. Because there was a school of thinking going into this fight that even if Terence Crawford wins the fight, he's not going to win. Because Canelo Alvarez, there's a mountain of evidence of him getting the benefit of the doubt on the scorecards countless times in Las Vegas. He lost 10 rounds to Floyd Mayweather, probably, right? One judge scored it a draw. I
don't recall that. Yes.
She wound up never judging again. But point is, he does seem to get the benefit of the doubt, even in more recent times, against Gennady Golovkin in the first fight. Most people think that Golovkin deserved to win.
Do you?
I thought Golovkin edged it in the first fight. I didn't think he won.
See, I thought it was
legit.
I thought it was a legit draw.
It was a very close fight, razor thin for sure. But a lot of
no doubt
people
about the second, right?
Yeah, Canelo won the second fight, I thought, and obviously he won the third fight.
First of all, not only do I agree with your assessment about he cannot get off to a slow start, but I spoke to Crawford this morning, and he agrees with you. So, I mean, I asked him, I said, look, let's be honest here. You are not the A side. Can you afford to start slow? And he said, absolutely not. I mean, it was a very candid interview. I have to be decisive. I have to show that I'm in control. I have to dictate the pace. And I thought that was a pretty clear-headed answer. Fighters are notoriously dishonest when they come into fights. And, this is the greatest camp I've ever had. I've never felt so good. The weight cut was so easy. And, they're all lying through their teeth. But I thought that about what kind of start he needs was incontrovertible. He has to bank the rounds, because I don't think that going against Canelo, and this is just, boxing 101, going against Canelo in a stadium fight where the crowd's going to be so heavily for him. He's the A side. He's the economic engine of boxing. Crawford knows what he's up against. He's asked for this, and I think that, his answer there tells you that he knows exactly what the hell he's in for. I'm here with Ring Magazine senior writer Keith Eidick. I'm Mark Kriegel, and we're breaking down the Canelo Crawford fight and awaiting the grand arrival of Canelo Alvarez. How much pressure is on Alvarez in this fight?
An enormous amount of pressure, because, like I mentioned earlier, Mark, his legacy is going to be damaged if he loses this fight. There are no two ways about it. He's already fighting an uphill battle in Mexico, where he's not as beloved as Julio Cesar Chavez and never will be. He completely understands that. For whatever reason, yes, he's wildly popular, but he doesn't have the esteem in terms of his legacy as he probably deserves.
You know who else is wildly popular? Our Max Kellerman, and he caught up with Terence Crawford not too long ago.
champ, about a dozen years ago, there were a lot of fighters in and around your weight class making a lot of noise. And you told me then that that's not your style. You're just gonna do your job. Did you think at that time that doing your job quietly would get you to this place, to the biggest fight in boxing?
Of course. You know, like I always said, as long as I keep winning, I'm gonna be where I need to be.
There was one fight along the way, though, where you went the distance. Since then, you knocked everybody out. Was that on your mind? Doing your job, but doing it in a way where the fans demand to see you?
Like I always say, I never go in the ring looking for a knockout. If it comes, it comes. And, you know, at 147, it came a lot.
Uppercut lands. Crawford on the attack. That's it. It's over. It's over.
The inside of my soul, when I get somebody hurt, tells me it's showtime.
Tells you it's showtime, or is there something in you that wants to hurt him?
It's showtime. You gotta go get him out of there.
When Canelo goes at you about your resume, do you feel a certain kind of way about that? Because he was the money man, he could attract the big fights, but you had to go looking for them and they weren't always there.
I don't feel anything about it. Nobody said anything about my resume until I moved up in weight. That's when that narrative came. Or he's not fighting nobody, to where people started to believe the hype, or he haven't fought nobody. Okay, so look at the fighters that I fought when I fought them. You know, was they nobodies or was they somebodies?
Interested to engage right now. Now he waits. Gets nailed again. He drops him on his nose. And Kenny Baylor doesn't bother to count. He's knocked out. Terence Crawford knocks him out in the 5th round after winning every single round of the fight. Crawford is another guy you're going to see a lot more of.
A couple years ago, you said, Canelo, that's super middle. That's too much for, like, it's too big. What has changed your mind between then and now you're fighting him?
I just, you know, took a hard look at him. You know, I sized him up in and out the ring, and I just think, you know, my skills is going to lead me to a victory. He comes from, what, 147? Mm-hmm. You know, he's not a big guy. You know, he's been fighting bigger guys his whole career. So if he can do it, why can't I? That's how I look at it and see it.
And the counter, right hook, the left, the right, Errol Spence on inline skates, and the referee has intervened. Mamma mia! Terence Bud Crawford has made history.
This is going to be easily the most watched championship boxing match in almost 50 years since Ali fought Spinks, because this is on Netflix. Do you feel any responsibility that when all the attention is on boxing, you've got to deliver?
I'm going to give him a victory. Like I said, everybody got their opinion. They're entitled to say and think whatever they want. I don't want to change anybody's opinion on anything until fight night.
Keith, Max asked him something in that piece. Is there something in you that wants to hurt your opponents? And I know for a fact that there damn well is. Terence Crawford is one of the most mean-spirited fighters. And I remember the trainer, Ben Davidson, saying there's an art to being mean-spirited as a fighter. But he's one of the meanest guys. He has true killer instinct. And there's something else with it. I've seen mean guys in there before. I've seen guys who want to hurt you. I have never seen it from a guy who can come at you as easily from the right side as the left. It's this sort of dichotomy within Crawford that's particular just to him. The same way he can be a good guy and a family man, he can be a killer. There's this dichotomy in him. He can go left to right. He can switch from being a nice guy to being a really mean guy too. What do you think the switching, what type of a problem does that pose for Canelo? Or has he seen enough from both sides?
Well, I think it's an enormous problem because he does it so flawlessly. He can fight the entire fight as a southpaw. He can fight an entire fight as an orthodox fighter. He can switch back and forth, within rounds. I mean, go back and forth and really confuse Canelo, because Canelo couldn't conceivably know how Crawford is going to approach this fight, because he has tricked people into thinking he's going to do one thing and then done another in the past, and I could see that happening on Saturday night as well.
Let me put it to you this way. Canelo is nothing if not a richly experienced fighter. Okay, he's fought I don't know how many orthodox fighters, and he also learned there's a stretch in his career. Trout, Arislandi Lara. You saw what he did to another southpaw, Billy Joe Saunders, who's really a craftsman. He knows how to deal with lefties. We know he knows how to deal with orthodox fighters. What's the difference?
Well, he has had some trouble at times with southpaws. He certainly had trouble with Lara, and
that was a while, but
it was a long time ago.
But it was a long. I think that he really learned his craft in those years.
He did, and he damn near decapitated James Kirkland, who was a southpaw. So he's had success against southpaws as well. But how do you prepare, Mark, for someone like Crawford? You can't say, oh, let's go replicate the sparring. Now, he tried. He brought Boots in. Right? And that was, by the way, that was at Boots' urging, not Canelo's.
Why do you think that was?
Boots wanted to go test himself against Canelo. He knew that he would, obviously you get some positive publicity out of it. Yeah, Boots knew that he would get some positive publicity out of it, of course. But he's the one who initiated that. He went to Canelo. Canelo didn't come to him. So obviously it worked out for Canelo because you can't find sparring to replicate Terence Crawford. That's about as good as you're going to do. But as high as I am on Jaron Ennis's talent, he's not Terence Crawford.
Right. Billy Joe, okay, in the last, I think, decade or so, he has fought just two lefties. John Ryder, who was workmanlike, what I thought was game, and Billy Joe Saunders, who was really an excellent fighter. It's just Canelo tore him up, broke his orbital bone. Is it really that big a difference? I understand that Crawford can change inside a round. Other fighters can't. But if you've seen enough, if you are as richly experienced as Canelo Alvarez is, shouldn't you be able to handle a guy switching?
Well, you would think, but there's no one else who's done it this way. There's no one to compare it to. And when does he do it? How does he do it? How does he keep Canelo guessing? Canelo is not looking to, he's looking for a guy to stand right in front of him in one position and bomb away on him. That's what he's turned into, unfortunately. That's why William Skull, for all the criticism that he rightly took for running, because let's be honest, he won probably 4 rounds. Not, like you said, not in a way that you traditionally win rounds. Canelo just stood there.
You'd never be a judge in Vegas.
Right.
No, I'm just sure.
But he didn't cut off the ring. He didn't make much effort to cut off the ring. It was a bizarre performance from Canelo.
Do you think that that's because Canelo these guys don't really pose a challenge to him? I think that, again, in the latter stages of Canelo's career, there's a class of fighter that looks on him not as competition, but as a payday. And I think that, and Crawford agreed with me when I brought this up, that they were in there to get their victory was signing the contract or going the 12 rounds. And every fight that Crawford is in, I know he's not as active, hasn't been as active, but he's there to win. He's not there to get paid.
True. To your earlier point about Terence Crawford having this meanness and this nasty streak in him, which he clearly does, you wonder if Canelo has lost that a little bit because he's let guys off the hook. That's my question. He's let guys off the hook, right? He's knocked down a lot of these fighters that he's gone the distance with in his last 6 fights. I mean, 7 fights in a row have gone to 12-round distance. So he's not knocking people out the way that he once did. Is he content to go to the distance? Is he showing compassion for, in the case of Jaime Munguia, because he's a fellow Mexican and he liked the kid and all of those things. But if he doesn't have I'm not saying that Terence Crawford won't bring that out of him, because it just might, particularly if it turns into a dogfight on Saturday night. But does he still have that to go take out Terence Crawford to ensure that he doesn't lose a fight that, from the standpoint of his legacy, he cannot lose?
No, he cannot lose. He cannot lose and be the guy he wants to be. It's one thing losing to Dimitri Bivol, who's a 175-pounder. Losing to Terence Crawford at 168 on the come-up, 2 divisions, is something else entirely. And it would imperil a reputation that Canelo holds absolutely sacred, not even internationally, but his standing as the great Mexican fighter of this age. So I think that's I've never seen this be about 2 more gargantuan egos, more explicitly concerned with their legacy. we're going to be hearing, I hear from Canelo Alvarez maybe in about 15 minutes. He'll show up and make his grand arrival. In the meantime, guy we know wrote this piece about the great Canelo Alvarez.
If the first thing you noticed was the hair, you weren't alone. A sign of his singularity. Mexican fighters comprise a long and glorious history. But across decades that span millennia, this Mexican fighter has done something his predecessors couldn't imagine.
First Mexican fighter to win titles above welterweight.
Not merely a pro at 15 or a champ at 20, but for almost a decade now, Canelo Alvarez has been boxing's leading man. Not to mention its undisputed box office king.
Canelo Alvarez, the biggest star in boxing.
While the game itself depends on Mexican fighters, this is the fighter on whom Mexico depends. Cinco de Mayo, that's his day. Mexican Independence Day, that too belongs to Canelo. A kid from Guadalajara didn't just go mainstream, he went global. A vicious puncher, classically trained, with titles in 4 divisions. And even in rare defeat, consumed with making history.
First and only boxer to hold all 4 major titles in the super middleweight division at the same time.
What Canelo did at 168 pounds remains without precedent.
Canelo has accomplished so much. He's already forced his way into the all-time greatest Mexican conversation.
Still, his reputation itself has come under question. Not the biggest man Canelo's ever faced, but the biggest threat to his legacy. While each fight changes the boxer, this fight could change boxing history.
And he is still at the top of his game.
Well, you know it's a Canelo Alvarez fight if you have a mariachi band. And it's a pretty cool violin. Would you say?
Yeah, very impressive.
I know you're a violin
Very
aficionado.
Yeah. Yes. I'm a little disappointed, by the way. I gotta
You
say
are.
something. I'm a little disappointed, a little offended, maybe.
Me? I did something.
That you did not use the voice when you introduced me that you used for the Canelo piece. It's a very professional announcer's voice, and I didn't get that type of respect. I'm a little disappointed. That's all
I'm
right.
sorry. You know, we'll take it up when we get off the air. I do want to ask you this. 30 years in the sport. When you came in, could you imagine a Mexican fighter who occupies the same place in the game that Canelo does now, which is the boxing's #1 attraction? Because when I came up, that was really not considered an option. That was a title that was held by American fighters only.
Yeah, and Chavez, while he was a star in the United States, he was not a star of this magnitude in the United States.
No, not even close.
Exactly.
Hey, by the way, I mean, I was there. Don King didn't really start promoting him in earnest until Tyson went away. So, yeah, no, you're right.
Right, and a big part of that too, Mark, was Canelo really has embraced English and he's learned to speak the language. He understands it perfectly. Sometimes I think he's not comfortable speaking it, but I think that's helped him in some ways become a. He also, had the right.
There's another
fights.
element, which is that the prominence of Mexico and the importance of Mexico as an economic engine for the sport has increased and increased and increased. So the Mexican fighters are respected more because the game needs them. And the last, I don't know how many years, certain divisions in the United States have diminished. Heavyweight, for example. And there's been a greater emphasis on Mexican fighters. I think that there's another element, which is Canelo's look, which was so distinct. Wait, who's this kid with red hair? Wait, what's going on here? That it focused. you were riveted to him. The power helped too. And that was, he became the number one attraction in boxing. I understand that he could hear he knew what everyone was saying in English, but his reluctance to speak in English, he was already, before he was talking as fluently as he is now in English, he was already the number one attraction in the game. And I think that's different, certainly from the fighters I grew up with. The game has become more international.
And it also helped that he fought Floyd Mayweather when he did. He was 23 years old.
Yeah.
By the way, Floyd was
By the way, all losses are not created equally, and that was a great loss, and it helped him.
It helped him develop in the ring and in his career. But
he became a pay-per-view star.
That's the thing.
You can only become a pay-per-view star if you fight a pay-per-view star.
Right. And
that's what people don't realize today.
Yeah, and it really did help him become a household name in the United States at a very young age, and he's still fighting 12 years later on the grandest stage, which is pretty amazing when you consider it.
I think that one of the things we forget about is how traditionally Mexican his journey has been. I mean, kids don't turn pro at 15 in the United States, but he did. He's traveled this very traditional, old school Mexican path, and I think that sometimes we forget about. We're looking at a kid who's been making his own way in that ring since he was 15 years old.
And he was 140 pounds at 15 years old when he made his pro debut. The other thing that I often think about sometimes when we assess Canelo's career is how differently things might have gone had when he fought Jose Cotto. If Jose Cotto was able to capitalize on hurting him early in the first round when he was badly hurt, it's the most hurt we've ever seen Canelo in a fight. What if Jose Cotto would have taken Canelo out?
Well, there's a difference in that. I still think back then, I know it wasn't ancient history, but a loss shouldn't be the end of your career. And thank God it wasn't. There's another way to look at that too, which is maybe Canelo was more resilient than we knew. Every fighter is going to get tested like that. Like, for instance, I thought that there were different stages of their career, but I thought that one of Mayweather's finest moments, if not his finest, was when he gets cracked by Mosley, and he's really about to go.
Oh yeah, he was.
But but the instinct in him and the courage in him is so finely honed. He knew what to do. He held on. He took what he had to take, and then he pitched a shutout from there on out. And how Mosley hit hard. Mosley hit him really hard, and he knew how to deal with it. So I thought that maybe we're seeing something that we haven't seen much of because people haven't been good enough to test Canelo. Is that a legit way to look at that Cotto fight?
But my point in saying that, though, is that if he got stopped in the first round by Miguel Cotto's worst brother, his career obviously wouldn't have become what it became. I mean, and it really, it's that fine of a line, right? Because if he gets stopped in that fight, he doesn't become Canelo Alvarez. That was my only point saying that.
No. I understand what you're saying. I think it's a legitimate point. And I unfortunately, we're in an age where, thanks to Mayweather, who was a complete anomaly, and other fighters I don't think should judge themselves against, there's only one Floyd Mayweather, where a loss has become a death sentence for your career. I think in that respect, the example of the UFC has been helpful. Everybody loses. In boxing, everybody's supposed to lose. I see all these guys with perfect records. I don't see that many perfect fighters. As a matter of fact, I don't see any perfect fighters. But you have all these guys with O's, and that's primarily because they've never been challenged enough. And there should be very, very few, if any, undefeated fighters in boxing. And I commend Canelo because he has lost, because he did fight Bivol. I'm much more interested in seeing Canelo Bivol than I am in Canelo Berlanga or Canelo Skull. No, 100%, in any event, you've been covering him for a while. The most impressive performances you've seen in Canelo Alvarez?
I would, in the more recent part of his career, and it's not all that recent anymore, but I think his win in the rematch against Golovkin stands out to me because a lot of people thought that he lost the first
not
fight.
Mexican style or what we like to. He
No.
was a really crafty, excellent.
Yeah, no,
boxer.
he really showed. He did. He really did in that fight. But a lot of people thought that he lost the first fight, which of course resulted in a draw, very dubious draw. But so I think in that fight when he came back and fought the way that he did and showed that he had different dimensions to his game and beat Golovkin is really one of the fights that stands out to me because, you know, frankly, in the last few years, you know, he loses to Bivol and then he's beaten some very good fighters, but he hasn't beaten any great fighters, right? I mean, you wouldn't say that since he's fought Bivol that he's beaten great fighters.
Look,
no, but
I think that
Golovkin's a great fighter.
Golovkin's a great fighter. I think that, and I don't mean to parse this too conveniently, but what he did at 168 in collecting all the belts and going through fighters like Saunders, who hadn't been beaten, and he just decimated him. I thought that was a great run, and it was without precedent. And he was doing something at a weight that no Mexican fighter had done before. I mean, I know that when I started covering Gilberto Ramirez, he was at 168, but didn't stay there long. I thought that, you know, Canelo moved up to go to 68. He had been around. He'd been 54 and 60 for a while. So he's not the biggest or tallest guy in the world. He's thick. He's strong. He's abundantly muscled, but he's not a giant. I mean, he will be the shorter fighter, and I think it's also worth mentioning here, since we've talked so much by necessity about the weight. He's facing a fighter in Terence Crawford who is 2 inches longer than Dmitry Bivol. I mean, do you think that there's a real deficit worth noting when it comes to reach?
There is. I mean, he's I think it's 4 inches in reach, I believe, or close to it, right? So, you know, he's taller, he's longer, as you said, and he really is not this tiny guy that maybe the public perceives him to be going into this fight. He might actually be the bigger guy, especially the way he's maintained the weight over the course of the last year and everything, because he hasn't fought in over 13 months. So maybe more is being made of the supposed size disadvantage that Crawford faces in this fight that should be. But Mark, you'd mentioned something. I think Canelo sometimes is held to a higher standard unfairly in some ways, because look at what he's done. Now, he moves up to light heavyweight, and yes, Sergey Kovalev
I thought that was a great win.
Had been beaten, right? I get it, had been knocked out. I completely understand. But that Crusher Kovalev was
a big dude, and he still had heavy
he could
hands.
still punch, and he took everything he had and didn't budge. We haven't seen anything close to what happened to him in the Jose Cotto fight since then. He's got a granite chin. Yeah, he has turned into more of a stationary fighter who's just looking to take guys out who stand right in front of him. That's all true, but I think he's unfairly criticized sometimes and maybe taken for granted in some ways, you know, particularly being the economic engine for the sport, as you've said.
Let me refresh here. We are up about 5 minutes. There you see the media center at the Fontainebleau Hotel, where everyone is awaiting the grand arrival of the very grand Canelo Alvarez. This is the fight that so many of us have wanted to see for quite a long time. This is the fight that they took to calling for a bitter time the one.
For decades now, boxing's most formidable opponent has been, well, boxing. Not the fighters, but the business. Negotiations that proved treacherous.
The sport is broken and fragmented. You can't make the fights that everybody wants to see.
Torturous.
How many years have I been clamoring so we can get the fights that we want to see when we want to see them?
And ultimately fruitless. That left generations of fans asking, what if?
We have a big vision. The sport is very important for us.
What if kings would meet? What if they were likely the two greatest active fighters of the 21st century? The the sport's biggest draw
Big shot by Canelo Alvarez.
and its savviest predator.
Crawford pouring it on. That's it. The fight's all over.
What if Canelo Alvarez fought Terence Crawford? Guess what? No more what if. It's on.
And there he is, His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, waiting as well for the grand arrival of Canelo Alvarez. He's got his Canelo Crawford shirt on, he got his Canelo Crawford hat on. And it's, in many respects, his show. One of the things that most interests me about the fight, in addition to the wonderful mariachi violinists, is the idea that even though Crawford has to come up a good way in weight, we've never seen Crawford lose. But we have seen Canelo lose. And I think it's to his credit. I think your career doesn't really become interesting until you lose. But in your mind's eye, it makes the fight credible, even though he has to come up all this weight. We've never seen Crawford lose. As a matter of fact, we've never seen him really challenge, have we?
I think the Sean Porter fight
Sean
was very
Porter
close,
for a while,
actually.
yeah.
I mean, it was close on the cards.
Wasn't close at the end.
No, and it, again, speaks to what you mentioned earlier about his killer instinct, what motivates him. When he was told in the corner, hey, the fight's close, or they have you down, or whatever
He was
told
outraged.
between rounds, he was pissed off, and he came out and took Sean Porter. Sean Porter is one of the best fighters in that division.
That blew me away.
And but it was a competitive fight before then, and one of the few competitive fights of Crawford's career.
If you know anything about Sean Porter and how tough he is and how tough he is in the gym, look, this is a guy who'd never been taken out. And the idea that Terence Crawford took him out, to me, I'll always remember that. I'm like, wow, it's over? And I looked at Porter and he wasn't protesting.
No.
Which to me said volumes. Just how destructive a puncher and how destructive a force Terence Crawford really is. And again, to me, Sean Porter is a guy who fights bigger than his weight. He's kind of like a fullback in there. He's really imposing physically. He wasn't a great knockout puncher, but he's the kind of guy who could just wear you down. He looked bigger than he weighed, and he fought bigger too. Anyway, here we are. I think we can toss to Mr. Max Kellerman.
All right, everybody. Guess who just arrived? I'll give you one guess. Who you think just arrived? The King? He is the super middleweight king. That's true. He's also the box office king. You know how many stadium fights Canelo's had? This is 7 stadium fights. He's undefeated in stadium fights. He gonna be undefeated at the end of this one too? One thing about Canelo is he's been in a million big events. And I'm going to ask him about this just between you and me when he gets here. Don't tell him. But has he ever been in a bigger fight than this one? Is this everyone knows this is easily the biggest fight of Terence Crawford's career. But has he ever been in a fight as big as Canelo Alvarez, who's been in a million huge fights? Floyd Mayweather, that was huge, and that was Floyd, but he was young then. He was young, and he wasn't going to be in front of, 50 million people worldwide. Because this ain't a pay-per-view. This is available to everybody. I think Triple G, those were big fights, but not like this. I think this is not only obviously the biggest fight of Terence Crawford's career, but in a career that's filled with almost nothing but huge fights, this is the biggest fight of Canelo Alvarez's career. And there he is. You can hear reactions now. Is he coming in this way? Canelo Alvarez has been knocking out grown men since he was 15 years old. Does he still have it? Does Canelo still have it? Are you sure he still has it? He's going to need it. Well, we know that. But he's going to need it to fight Terence Crawford. And by the way, Canelo, when you talk to him about Terence Crawford, he knows what he's in with. A lot of times, fighters who take smaller fighters, people think they're just doing it for the bag, right? And they kind of take it easy. They don't get as up in training for them as they should, and they can get upset. Canelo is sparring with Boots Ennis getting ready for this fight. He's not falling into that trap because he knows what he's in with. And these two fighters, Canelo and Crawford, were the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world consecutively. Because after the Bivol fight, people said, okay, well, how can you still call him pound-for-pound if Bivol just beat him and then Crawford beat Spence? Now people will talk about Usyk and Inoue and the monster, you know. I get it. But those two guys were considered by most people the consecutive pound-for-pound champs. I don't know in the history of boxing how many times it's happened that those two fighters have fought each other. That the two consecutive fighters who've been considered with the pound-for-pound crown have fought each other when they still have something left. And I'll tell you what I've been telling people for the last month about this fight. In 1978, Muhammad Ali fought Leon Spinks in a rematch, and 90 million people watched it, right? But since then, boxing's been on pay-per-view. So even the biggest fights, I don't care what fight you mentioned, the biggest fights, they don't do 90 million, they don't do 50 million, they don't do 30 million viewers, right? But this fight is going to be easily the most watched championship fight since 1978. That's 47 years ago. That's almost half a century. It's going to be the biggest fight in terms of how many people are watching in almost half a century. Is Canelo just too big? Is he just too big for Crawford? Is he too big? Too strong? Too smart? Does he still have the defense? Because Canelo's just been walking fighters down the last 7-8 fights. They've been running from him, and he's just been chasing them around. But that's not Canelo, really. The real Canelo is very slick with his upper body movement and counters. Is he still that guy? Is that even how he should fight Crawford? Or is that giving him too much respect? Marvin Hagler, when Duran moved up to fight him, gave him a lot of respect. Maybe that was a mistake. It was a close fight. But when he fought Hearns, he said, to hell with that, I'm going to get this guy. And knocked him out. Should Canelo be the slick Canelo? Or should he go get him? A lot of questions going into this fight as we await the champ. So does he still have that muscle memory, Canelo, if he needs it against Crawford to be that slick counterpuncher? And is that even a good idea for him to be thinking that way? Or should he be like Hagler was with Tommy Hearns when he said it was destruct and destroy, and he came just to bring the fight to Tommy Hearns? A lot of questions going into this one. Canelo, who I knew was going to be the one to fight Triple G because he never ducked anybody. When he was coming up, he was the money guy. He fights Floyd Mayweather very early in his career when he really wasn't ready. But then he fought guys like Austin Trout and Erislandy Lara, and the kind of fighters that you would never put your fighter in with if you didn't have to. But he never ducked guys. He wanted the best and fought everybody. Canelo Alvarez is here, ladies and gentlemen. There he is. I see him. As I said, he's done this a million times, but you know what? I think I should ask him. You think I should ask him, is this the biggest fight he's ever been in? You think I should ask Canelo? I think so. I think so. Let's ask Canelo. He'll tell you. Here he comes. The undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. A guy who turned pro as a teenager, 15 years old. And by the way, has been drawing crowds the whole time. Like in Mexico, people could see it early and would sell out arenas as a teenager. Used to this sort of thing. I see Richard Schaefer. I see you, Richard. Canelo Alvarez looking not just to defend his title as the super middleweight champion, but whose era is it? Whose era was it really? Was it Canelo's all along, or was it Crawford's? We're going to find out. There he is. Hey, champ, always good to see you. I was just asking the question I want to ask you. You've been in a million big fights since you're a kid, really. But I was thinking about it. Is this the biggest fight of your career?
Oh, it's one of the biggest, for sure.
One of, because I'm thinking maybe it's the biggest stadium fight.
Oh, if you mean about what is around the fight, yeah, it's the biggest.
It'll be seen by the most people, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Stadium fight, the biggest event.
You're right.
And this has been your era, but you two are the last two standing from that era, right?
Yeah, you know, it's Riyadh season, Netflix, everybody around this fight. You can see that how big is this fight, you know, and you have two of the best fighters, pound fighters, fighting each other. So Saturday, September 13th, we want to see who's the best.
As you have done your whole career, you take big risks. That's why I knew when no one would fight Triple G, you would, because you always have taken big risks. Do you want to tell your fans anything? Because they understand this is a big risk fight. You can't afford to lose to a little guy. Do you want to tell them anything to reassure them that you have this?
Solamente agradecerles todo el apoyo que siempre me han brindado. Muchas gracias. Muy agradecido de verlos aquí a todos y contento de representarlos en estas fechas tan importantes que es para México, la independencia de México. Así que gracias a todos y que viva México, cabrones!
I'm super grateful for all the support that you always provided to me. I'm really excited to be here. And, well, viva México, cabrones.
Thank you, Canelo. Another great event. I can't wait for it Saturday night.
I can't wait, too.
And
te hizo un regalo para usted, para el campeón, de todos modos. Y no tacos, no boxing, no live. Fui para buscarte, pero no estás allá.
No, acá andamos entrenando, oiga. Gracias, le agradezco mucho.
¿Quiero sacar una foto, por favor?
Bye.
Sorry.
Eddie. Eddie, I've been wanting to ask you this for a while. Canelo has been one of the most skillful counterpunchers his whole career. But the last 7 or 8 fights, guys are running, and he has to chase them around. Can he still rely on his skills from 4, 7, and 8 fights ago?
Eddie, Canelo siempre ha sido uno de los mejores contragolpeadores de la historia y sus rivales siguen huyendo de él. ¿Todavía tiene lo necesario para hacer el trabajo?
Así es, y el sábado lo vamos a demostrar por nocaut.
He still has it, and Saturday we're going to show it by knockout.
I think of him sometimes like Marvin Hagler, who when he fought Duran, he gave him too much respect, and it was close. So when he fought Hearns, he thought, no, I'm going to go knock him out. What mentality do you want Canelo to have for this fight?
Me recuerda un poco a Marvin Hagler y lo que tuvo que hacer. Cuando ves a Canelo, ¿cuál es la mentalidad que él tiene para este combate?
La mejor de su carrera, lo mejor de 20 años de preparación y de peleador, eso se va a ver el sábado.
This is the best Canelo we're going to see in 20 years of career, and we're going to show it on Saturday.
Thank you, Eddie.
Gracias. Viva México.
All right. Canelo Alvarez, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest star in boxing for 10 years now, in the biggest fight of his career Saturday night. By the way, the undercard usually starts Saturday before the fight, not this fight.
I want to say something. I want to appreciate you guys and thank Turki Al-Rashid for bringing this fight to America and make this fight the biggest fight of the boxing history make here in America for you guys. So thank you so much.
It is not me. It is not me. It is my country. It is my boss. The thank for him, the Crown Prince, and we wish good luck for Canelo, and you enjoy the fight on Saturday.
And let me tell them now, so the undercard does not start Saturday. The undercard starts tomorrow, and it's the best price there is, $3.99. It's free. You're all invited tomorrow, 2 p.m. at the Blue Live Theater right here at the Fountain Blue. The undercard starts. And available now, tickets to Thursday night's Underdog Series. It's the debut. You want to see young up-and-coming fighters and great fights? Same thing, same place, 8 p.m., the Blue Live Theater right here at the Fountain Blue, 8 p.m. Thursday night. Canelo, thank you so much. Turkey, thank you so much. Richard Schaefer, Eddie. All right, that's all she wrote, folks.
Thank you. See you.
Well, Keith, we do have, I think, a headline coming out of Max's interview, not with Canelo, but with his trainer, Eddie Reynoso, where he said Canelo's going to win by knockout. I hadn't heard that before. Had you?
No, and he also said that we're going to see the best Canelo that we've seen in 20 years. So if there weren't a lot of pressure already on Canelo, his trainer sure put a lot more on him.
I mean, that's the prediction we've been waiting for to spice this up. I don't know if it really needs that much more spice, but that's interesting. You know, a trainer saying that my guy's winning by knockout. I did not expect that.
No, I didn't expect it either, based on the build-up toward the fight. I haven't heard anything like that. So, look, man, I think Canelo hearing a lot of people and reading a lot of things about him losing this fight, because many more people now believe that Crawford is going to win than when this fight was first mentioned several years ago. People thought that a lot of people thought that it shouldn't even happen, and now there are people who think Crawford has everything it takes to win the fight. I'm sure that's pissed Canelo off and maybe lit a fire in him that hasn't been there for his last several fights, as we alluded to before.
And one thing we have not seen of late, perhaps you have it in your notes there, when was the last time Canelo knocked the guy out?
So the last time he scored a knockout was against Caleb Plant in November 2021 to become the undisputed super middleweight champion. Caleb Plant's a very good...
4 years ago, very good fight.
Almost 4 years ago. He was undefeated at the time. You know, didn't fight the highest level of opposition overall, Caleb Plant, but a very good fighter.
I want to raise something here, which is Terence Crawford is almost 38. He will be 38 later this month, and Canelo's 35. But Canelo's been fighting as a pro since 15. Canelo has been in more fights. His body has been through tougher fights. He has lost, as we said before. He's fought over 500 rounds, more than twice as many rounds as Terence Crawford. In boxing years, who's the younger fighter?
You would have to say Crawford, because really it's only chronologically that Canelo is the younger fighter in this case. And also, it's not only the fights, Mark, because some of these fights have been difficult fights, certainly the Triple G fights, and some of them haven't. But it's the training camps. The training camps take, the fighters and trainers always tell us that, the camps take a lot out of you. So he's fought almost 70 times, you know, so he's the older fighter, despite that technically he's 35 and Crawford will turn
older
38.
in boxing years, let's put it that way.
Absolutely. And Crawford will be 38 in a couple of weeks.
All right. So, on the flip side, Crawford has gotten to a phase of his career. For a lot of reasons, he's basically fighting once a year. And he's very selective in who he wants, what kind of fights he wants. You know, we saw him over a year ago against Israel Madrimov. Does ring rust factor into this?
Well, it's interesting because if you look at Terence Crawford coming off comparable layoffs in the last few years, well, he was coming off basically a one-year layoff when he fought Sean Porter, who gave him one of the toughest fights of his career, but he did knock him out off a long layoff. Now, that was almost 4 years ago.
And how was the long layoff with Spence?
Well, it wasn't quite as long because he had fought Avanisi in the previous December, so he got not a hard fight and not many rounds, and only went to the 6th round. However, at least he fought, and he was in camp, and it wasn't quite as long a layoff. However, look what happened in his last fight. He had a one-year layoff going into that fight, and he moved up in weight, fought Madrimov is very good, but he wasn't as effective off of a long layoff, and no one will, as good as Madrimov might have been that night and before that, no one will confuse him for Canelo Alvarez, even the 35-year-old Canelo Alvarez who hasn't scored a knockout in almost 4 years.
I'll tell you what, I kind of disagree with the Madrimov analysis. I know it's popular, but I was speaking to Crawford this morning, and he says that Madrimov was sort of unique. He's tall, he was bouncy, he was long, that Canelo doesn't present anything like Madrimov, completely different animals. And I just think that Madrimov had a unique style, a unique rhythm to him. Canelo's more predictable. But let's listen in. I have to say, Keith, you're the best. I got to get you one of these white suits.
Well, with my milky white skin, I don't really think that
I think
white
it'd be
suit's
great. As long as you have the shades. Let's listen to Canelo.
Tacos al pastor, el rica. And if we get you to answer in Spanish, just the best Mexican fighters. You know, can you talk a bit about, because a lot of people call you the best Mexican fighter ever. Who, in your opinion, is, you know, if you had to put some of the greatest fighters in Mexico, who do you think they are?
No, sabes que no me gustaría ponerme a mí ahí todavía no me retiro y creo que mis números van a hablar cuando me retire, pero tenemos grandes peleadores mexicanos como Julio César Chávez, Gilberto Román, Salvador Sánchez, la Chiquita González, Pinito López, demasiados peleadores que te puedo nombrar, no quiero perder ninguno, así que son demasiados todos, mi admiración para todos y muy contento de representar a mi país en este momento.
Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Welcome to see Challenge. How are you? Wow, you have a big fans here in Vegas.
Yeah, you know now. Yeah, no, I'm so excited to be here. I always have the support of my fans, and I'm very glad to see them here support me, and I'm very happy.
That's great. What does it teach you that this fight is being held as part of a Riyadh season?
No, I'm very happy to be part of Riyadh season. They train me really good. They make this happen here in America. The biggest fight of boxing is gonna happen here in America because Turki Al-Ashi make this happen. So I'm very glad and grateful with Riyadh season.
Tell us more about the preparations for the fight on the 13th. Tell us more about the preparations for the fight on the
No, I prefer myself better than ever. I have really good training camp, and I'm ready to show September 13th.
Are you ready as usual?
I'm more than ready.
Do you think it will be the toughest fight?
I don't know. We need to see. We need to wait for September 13th because I had a lot of good fights. So.
What did she say?
I'm his man to win. No, I have a lot of huge fights in my career, so we need to wait till September 13th to see.
Last question. Who's your stylist? Who's helping you?
Amiri.
You have a stylist?
Yeah.
Choosing
Amiri dressing me.
That's your stylist?
Yeah.
Amiri. Shout out to him. Or her?
Him.
Him. Shout out to him. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, Keith, this is precisely what we never heard from the guy who was commonly perceived as the greatest of all Mexican fighters, the standard bearer for the nation, for the style, Julio Cesar Chavez. This type of fluency, this type of accessibility in America. What does it say about Canelo?
That he's a very smart businessman because it has made him a star in the United States over the course of the last 12, 13 years. He's made gargantuan sums of money. He's a smart guy.
He's also been a great trash talker.
Yeah.
You know, I remember the Demetrius Andrade attempt to crash his post-fight
You want
press
payday,
conference.
you want payday. Yeah, no, he is. And he's got a good sense of humor, too. If you've spent some time around Canelo, you know, when you get him in a group setting, you know, with reporters and everything, he's got a good, he likes to joke around and everything. He's got a playful side to him.
So my question is this. We know, beyond a shadow of any doubt, that we are now looking at, in his great resplendent white suit, the richest of all Mexican fighters, okay?
By a lot.
Can he ever be perceived as the greatest?
By whom?
By Mexico. By the world.
I don't think so. I don't think he'll ever replace Chavez in the hearts of Mexican boxing.
Is there anything that he can do on Saturday night against Terence Crawford that people will leave saying, he's the best, he's the man, he's the all-timer, and not Chavez? Or is that just...
I don't think... This is a huge fight, Mark. I'm not trying to downplay the magnitude of the fight, but I just think he's perceived as the favorite, as someone who should win the fight because he's theoretically the bigger man, despite that may or may not be true, and he's supposed to win. So I don't think that there's anything... Now, if he went in there and knocked out Terence Crawford in the third or fourth round or something, which I obviously wouldn't predict happens, you know, maybe he gets more credit than if he wins a narrow 12-round decision. But I don't think there's really anything he can do to change his legacy by winning this fight.
He gets a knockout. I think
But then don't you think if he gets the knockout, then they say, look, Crawford really shouldn't have been in this fight. He's really a welterweight.
If he gets it that easy, which I don't
is likely that either.
No, but here's what I do think. If it turns out to be a great fight, and I think that there's an excellent chance it turns out to be a great fight, and you can see what's best about both men. And again, for the sake of argument, he does win a greatly contested fight. You can see that Crawford was comfortable at the weight. You can see what these guys are, that for the sake of argument, this was a great fight at a great weight. The way they fight, that visual, and that stays with you. And I do think that contributes to the reputation you're standing for decades to come. I do think, in addition, you know, this type of economic opportunity has never been available to a Mexican fighter. He has, in fact, changed the game, and he's doing it at weights that no Mexican fighter has ever had this type of success for. I hold out Gilberto Ramirez for the moment. But this is not the end of his career, presumably, right? Is there anything he can do from here on out? Because he does hold that Mexican reputation sacred. Is there anything that he can do to improve his standing as the great Mexican fighter and make an argument to supplant Julio Cesar Chavez?
I still don't know if he would supplant Chavez. However, if he were to fight David Benavidez, which is the fight that people have wanted to see for the last several years and he frankly has avoided, and he were to beat Benavidez, it would enhance his legacy. I still don't think it would help him, go past Chavez in the minds and hearts of Mexicans.
Interesting point. I think I agree with you. I agree with you on the Benavidez, and I think that's part of the unspoken. It's part of what's being unspoken here, and you're right. Look, let's think about what we're going to see on Saturday night. What are the crucial strategic factors? What does Canelo have to do?
Well, he better be a lot more aggressive than he was in his last fight, because he can't afford, like you said earlier, Crawford can't afford to give away rounds. Canelo can't afford to allow Crawford to switch on him and bank rounds early in the fight, assuming he gets the credit on the scorecards for doing that. So he can't afford to get off to a slow start either.
Think about, you saw some of this in the Kovalev fight, because I had Kovalev Canelo, a really close fight, although I never had the feeling that the outcome was going to be in doubt. I thought that Canelo was just kind of tightening the noose, and eventually he was going to do what he did. It was a really impressive knockout, but I never thought it was quite in doubt, even when Kovalev was out jabbing him, piling up points. This is a different animal. I'm not sure that he can fall behind to Crawford. And if Crawford is right, and Crawford can do what he told me this morning that he wants to do, be decisive, be in control from the start banking rounds. How much pressure is going to be on that man? How much pressure is going to be on Canelo Alvarez after 4, 5, 6 rounds if he's down on the scorecards?
Well,
can he play catch up in the same way against a guy like Terence Crawford?
Down on the scorecards, and that's we've been over this ad nauseum over the course of this telecast, but you never know, which is why we would love open scoring, of course. But will he get desperate toward the later rounds if he really does feel that he's way behind on the cards and fight differently? I can't help but go back to what happened against William Skull. I don't expect him to approach this fight differently, and I certainly don't expect Terence Crawford to fight the way that William Skull did. He is not going to run. But the fact that he really didn't even try to cut off the ring, I don't know, that didn't sit well with me.
I didn't sit well with me either, nor have some of his opponents of late. But I think that that Terence Crawford is a much more high-value target, that he will definitely motivate Canelo a bit more. I don't think you're going to see the same guy who fought William Skull. I don't think you're going to see the same guy who fought Berlanga, Munguia. I don't think you're going to see that Canelo. I think that, listen, he understands the game. He knows he can't be that same guy against Crawford. Crawford just approaches the task with that much more intensity, violence, and technique. I do hear that the Crawford camp is, in fact, comfortable with the judges for this fight. Sure. And having a fight in a vacuum, what seemed to me to be a vacuum in Saudi Arabia, and having something in a stadium here in the States, that's different. And if Crawford, again, for the sake of argument, can succeed in quieting the crowd, and all of a sudden people know what they're looking at, if he can bank rounds, I think that puts Canelo in a really highly pressurized situation. And, a fighter as smart as Terence Crawford knows when you got to make your move, you're at a great disadvantage. It's not like fighting an old Kovalev here.
Yeah, no, I agree. But all of these judges have judged Canelo, and they've judged Crawford fights. All of them. Steve Weisfeld, first and foremost, has judged a lot of Crawford fights and has judged a lot of Canelo fights. He was and Tim Cheatham and Max DeLuca have also scored fights for both guys, though less than Weisfeld. Let's keep in mind, Steve Weisfeld is commonly considered one of the best judges in boxing.
I think the best, yeah.
However, he did have Dmitry Bivol winning 115-113, as the other two judges did. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others who were there and watched it on TV, Dmitry Bivol won at a minimum 8 rounds in that fight, and he probably won 9 rounds, and he didn't get credit for that. So you have to wonder, is there something about the way that Canelo Alvarez fights that judges like Steve Weisfeld favor and could make it more difficult for Terence Crawford than other people might perceive it to be as it's happening?
But judges are human too,
and it's subjective. It's a subjective science.
But judges are human too, but I also think that the idea of this fight, the perception of this fight, is wholesale different than the Bivol fight. I think that going into the Bivol fight, the presumptive winner, the presumptive favorite, was Canelo. I don't think many people, I don't think people really imagined this thing going to happen the way that it happened. So it almost, my take on this, and again, it's entirely subjective. And if you listen to the broadcast, you heard it as well. People are getting used to the idea like, oh wait, this isn't what we thought was going to happen. But because this is such a hyped fight, and because Crawford comes into this being Terence Crawford, a pound-for-pound great, one of the greatest fighters this century, who, if he wins, who knows what he goes down as. I think that people will be, my feeling is that the perception of this fight among the judges will be more even-handed from the jump.
You asked a few minutes ago, will Crawford be able to silence the crowd? I was at T-Mobile Arena when Bivol beat him. It was pretty quiet. It's maybe a third of the crowd size that we might see on Saturday night.
Right.
But they were pretty quiet as Bivol banked round after round after round and was clearly in control of the fight going into the championship rounds. It was not on Mexican Independence Day weekend, but it was on Cinco de Mayo weekend. All Canelo fans, Bivol's not selling tickets in Las Vegas, and they were pretty quiet. So yes, Terence Crawford can silence the crowd if he starts banking rounds and beating Canelo decisively and demoralizing, maybe not Canelo, but his fans.
Okay. What does Crawford have to do? Or what can't he do? What are the imperatives for Crawford?
What he told you today, he cannot get off to a slow start, which he oftentimes does. He can't do it in this fight.
What are the imperatives for Canelo?
I think he has to put as much pressure on Crawford. Now, he's a counterpuncher, naturally a counterpuncher, obviously, but he has to put as much pressure on Crawford as he can't let Crawford get comfortable. And that's going to be very hard to do because Crawford's comfortability is one of his greatest strengths. He's so confident and so smooth and ambidextrous, and he does so many things well in the ring. Have you ever seen anyone make him uncomfortable? Someone needs to make him uncomfortable, and that's something that Canelo can't sit there.
I guess Kavalauskas for about 30 seconds.
Right, and Gamboa for maybe around that same amount of time.
Look what happened to Gamboa.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So but Canelo can't stand there and let Crawford do what he wants. He's going to have to be much more active than he was in his last fight, much more aggressive.
See, I think there's another really interesting variable here, maybe the most crucial of the fight outside of who starts better, okay? And that has to do with the natural, Canelo's by nature powerful guy with a big head and a big neck and a great chin. I don't think Canelo gets nearly enough credit for his chin. That's one factor. The other thing is because he doesn't run, because he will be there, because he is coming up in weight, how does Terence Crawford take Canelo's punch?
Well, of course.
And, he's going to be there, and he's a dog, so he's going to get hit at some point. The question is, how does he take that punch from a bigger guy?
Yeah, that's the whole fight in a nutshell, because he's the perceived smaller guy, and Canelo's a big puncher. He hasn't been as aggressive or as assertive as we would like to have seen him in his last several fights, but he's a huge puncher. He's a great counter puncher. His timing is impeccable at times, but he doesn't look like the same guy. I would say that from an aggression standpoint.
Canelo.
Yeah, he's winning fights, but he doesn't look like he has that killer instinct, as we mentioned earlier, that he's had.
Because he hasn't had a killer in front of him.
Well,
right?
I wouldn't say that all of these guys have run. Berlanga didn't run. He just he wasn't nearly good enough to beat Canelo, but he didn't run.
I think that, one of the things that happened with Berlanga, when he gets knocked down, no, but neither Munguia, as you say, nor Berlanga is in a class with Canelo Alvarez. That much we know. I think this comes down to one of the reasons why stylistically this fight should work is because Terence Crawford is a dog's dog. For all of his technique, for all of his boxing acumen, he's there to fight. And what happens when you come up in weight against a naturally bigger guy who has a great chin? I know that he's handled big guys. I've seen Terence Crawford handle big guys in the gym. This is different. This is smaller gloves. This is a guy who's accustomed to the weight. I do think because of the kind of fighter Terence Crawford is, when you put these guys together and you do the boxing calculus, something's got to give, and that's why I love this damn fight.
Yeah, that's what makes it a fascinating fight. But to your point, that could lead to his downfall. That dog in him that is going to make him stand there and fight obviously could lead to him getting knocked out.
And that's what everybody wants to see. And it's all predicated on me because Terence Crawford won't back down at some point. You know he's going to get his. That's what makes it interesting. Can he stand up to Canelo's punch? Can he break Canelo's chin? And can Canelo, conversely, do something we've never seen before, which is beat Canelo Crawford or beat Terence Crawford? Or, as Eddie Reynoso just said, and this is kind of your headline, can Canelo actually do what Reynoso said and knock him out, knock out Terence Crawford?
And I don't see Crawford's a great fighter and a first ballot Hall of Famer, obviously one of the best of this generation. I've had him at the top of my pound-for-pound list for a very long time, despite arguments from a lot of people. But I don't see him knocking Canelo Alvarez out. I don't see it. The guy's got a granite chin. Mark, I actually do think he does get a lot of credit for his chin. It's one of his best assets. I mean, since that Cotto fight, which we mentioned earlier, when he's been buzzed in fights, he's hit it well. Because he has mentioned at times that people hurt him a little bit or he felt a particular shot in a fight, but he's good at masking it. He's got a granite chin. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I would be very surprised if Terence Crawford knocked out Canelo Alvarez. I would be less surprised if Canelo Alvarez knocked out Terence Crawford.
Okay. I'll give you a white suit if you're right. I think that's going to be great on you, man.
Keep pushing his white suit
I think that's going to recreate the whole idea of Keith Idec, and I think as a senior writer for Ring Magazine, a senior guy, a sage voice, I think you deserve a damn white suit like Canelo Alvarez. Okay, but here's what I want to hold you to, and here's what the white suit, the resplendent white suit, depends on who's going to win the fight, Keith.
It's either, look, I see it going one of two ways. I see Terence Crawford beating Canelo on points in a more narrow fashion than he deserves. I think it'll be closer on the scorecards than...
Does Canelo get beat up? If it happens like that, does Canelo get beat up?
No, I just think, no. I think Crawford is just winds up being too smart, too skillful, too athletic, too everything for him, and wins a decision. Maybe like, say he deserves 116, 112, 117, 111. He gets 115, 113. Of course. I mean, I could see that.
Very boxing.
I could also, I could see Canelo catching him with something late that really impacts the fight. Those are the two ways that I would see it going. You
don't see a knockout. You don't see Reynoso.
I think if he catches him with something late, I could see him. If he hurts Crawford, I think he'll finish him. Crawford would finish him too because he's one of the best finishers in the history of the sport. I just don't think he's going to hurt Canelo, particularly up top. So those are the two ways I see it going. Crawford winning a decision or Canelo by late stoppage.
All I remember, we talked before about the Sean Porter fight, and taking out Sean Porter, to me, I know how tough Sean Porter is. It opened up my sense of possibility for Crawford. I don't know if he knocks him out. I'd lean toward him winning on points. I think your analysis is in fact astute, that if he does win on points, the scorecards will be tighter than they should have been.
Yeah.
But I could see this going either way, and I think it's going to be a hell of a fight because you have two very violent fighters when they're at their best. And I think that certainly Crawford will demand of Canelo Alvarez that he be at his best.
And I think it's a real opportunity for the sport too, Mark. We haven't touched on this much so far, but Max alluded to it several times, that this has the potential to be seen by, more fans, like at a championship level. I don't mean Jake Paul and Mike Tyson or something like that. I mean a real high-level, world-class fight will be seen by more people in the United States and perhaps globally than any fight since Muhammad Ali and Leon Spinks. Leon Spinks in their rematch in 1978. It's a very long time ago. I was a little kid. Even you were a little kid then, right?
I was already an old guy. I actually was. I was in high school or something like that.
But all kidding aside, I mean, this is something that the sport needs. We need.
Well, it needs it for a couple reasons. First of all, I mean, look, this is this TKO promotion, and we're seeing what could be, or personally I hope to be, a new era in boxing. I'm hoping it's we no longer think of an undefeated record as some sort of prerequisite to getting a big fight. But I also think one of the things that has really diminished boxing's popularity over several decades now is the over-reliance on pay-per-view. Like, not everyone's, just because you're an undefeated guy doesn't make you a pay-per-view fighter. There are very few pay-per-view fighters in the history of the sport. That guy right there in his cool white suit is one of the few.
He is, but we're going away from the pay-per-view model now, thankfully.
Right.
Turkey Al-Sheikh
I don't want to
has
see
made
it
that.
anymore, to be honest with you.
And no one wants to see it anymore. The
Because
fans, forget about us.
but
The fans don't want to see it.
I think that's
pockets.
one of the reasons why fans lost interest is it became too difficult to get a fight. And at least the Netflix model, on paper or in theory, makes it accessible across the globe. If you played this thing right, as we know, boxing is a great sport. Yeah. I understand all the problems with boxing, and they're not going to go away. But the biggest problem that boxing has had in the pay-per-view model is that the big fights, people, hey, how do you get that? Or what do you do? Where is it on again? People don't know because it's too much. You don't have to worry about where the Super Bowl is or where the NFC Championship game is or where the NBA Finals or the conference finals. You don't need to search high and low for big games and big contests in other sports. In boxing, it's such a damn production that I think that the sport has sort of siloed itself into a diminished state, which is a damn shame.
And most households in the United States have at least one Netflix subscription at this point, so it's available to many more people than any other fight that we've seen in quite some time. So you would hope that people like what they see, not only of the main event, but maybe they catch some of the undercard where there's some very good fights. Lester Martinez against Christian Mbili can't miss as an action fight, probably. Yep. Callum Walsh and Fernando Vargas Jr., while not the biggest names in the sport, are evenly matched at this point in their careers, both undefeated guys. So hopefully people see some good action fights.
That's precisely the kind of...
Right. They're risking their O's at earlier points.
They're risking their O's, both of them on the way up. But that makes a thrilling fight. And listen, you can't see Crawford Canelo every day. It's going to be, this is a kind of fight that's decades in the making. But that kind of fight, that kind of fight, two guys on the way up, that's the kind of fight you should expect to see in a healthy sport.
And reward the loser for taking the risk. And that's the UFC model, and that's something that boxing could learn from UFC.
The irony is that we're talking about a guy in Canelo right there whose loss to Mayweather didn't hurt him. First of all, it gave him an immense knowledge. But second of all, it made him a pay-per-view fighter.
Right.
You know, it popularized him. And I've said this for years now. Your career doesn't become a truly interesting proposition until you lose. That's when it becomes dramatic. Anyway.
Yeah, but like I said, I hope people who don't ordinarily watch boxing, as people whose our careers are heavily invested in the health of this sport, and frankly, it needs to be run differently, and that's the path that we're taking now. So let's hope that some people, maybe millions globally, tune into the fights on Saturday night and come away from it with a more positive perception of boxing than they have today.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. You don't want that white suit, man. I think you look it up.
Man, I'm telling you.
That's you,
you're
man.
Killing me with
Keith,
this white
that's you,
suit.
brother.
Can you imagine
I can't,
white suit like that on my? I mean, I'm
yeah,
like
I think it'd be great, man.
Like a damn ghost, man.
No, as long as you, I just want to make sure, like, no shirt though. You're gonna wear like, I want you to wear like our man.
You told me to.
I want you to wear. I want you to.
Before,
Well, I just,
Yeah, I can't pull that off. I know my lane, and that ain't it.
Is this part of Canelo's legacy? The first stadium fight in Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an important part of his legacy. I mean, the stadium fights in Vegas weren't really available until a couple of years ago, until they built this stadium when the NFL came to Las Vegas. But, a fight at Sam Boyd Stadium, UNLV Stadium, didn't have the same cachet as Allegiant Stadium.
This is something different. This is an NFL stadium.
No, absolutely. And
it's a statement that this is America's sport. He's going to fill this place up.
Yeah, and look what he did during the pandemic when he fought Billy Joe Saunders at AT&T Stadium. I think the paid attendance was somewhere in the mid-60s, which was the largest crowd for an indoor stadium fight since Ali against Leon Spinks the first time.
Well, let's hope that this exceeds that in crowd size, and we make good on all the expectations. It will be 9 o'clock live on Netflix, Saturday night. Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez. We are done with the grand arrival, and we are now awaiting the grand fight.